Welcome to the Marketing Spotlight, where we share the career journeys of Michigan State University marketing alumni. I'm your host, Katie Sadler, and today with us, we have Sarah MacKenzie. Sarah graduated from MSU in 2016 with a major in marketing and is a product marketing manager at YouTube, currently based in Singapore. Sarah, welcome to the Marketing Spotlight.
Thanks, Katie. I'm very excited to be here today. So thanks for having me.
No, we're really excited to talk to you, especially about your experiences being abroad. So we'll dive into that quite a bit throughout the next 15 minutes. Sarah, can you start us out just with a high-level overview of your career so far?
Well, right out of actually graduating from Michigan State, I started at Google. I started at the company about 2.5 weeks after graduation. So it was a huge whirlwind. And I just got in my car and drove down the road to Ann Arbor, where I started my career. Definitely weird to, of course, be a Spartan in Wolverine territory. My first role was at Google. I worked an associate account strategist on Google customer experience team. Ultimately, what I did is I was kind of a point person for Google advertisers who needed support for their Google Ads account. So I did Google Ads, Google Merchant Center, and Google Analytics, all over the phone support, email support, and chat support for about 2 years living in Ann Arbor. Ultimately, I was a marketing grad, really interested in Google's Associate Product Marketing Manager rotation program. After my couple of years in a series of volunteer projects and internal networking, I was able to apply to the APMM program, which I interviewed for and then got approved for. Then I transferred within the company to San Francisco, where I worked out of our San Bruno office in YouTube. My first role within that program was on the YouTube creator marketing team, specifically focused on YouTube creator programs. I worked in San Bruno for about 1.5 years before then rotating in the program to Singapore, where I joined the YouTube APAC brand marketing team. I moved here to Singapore in September 2019 and joined the team and no looking back. So graduated from the program this past October 2020. Now I'm just full-time based on YouTube APAC brand marketing, and I'll be here for the foreseeable future.
Sarah, how long have you been in Singapore?
Moved here September 2019, I'd say about 1.5 years, which has been crazy because when you are a Michigan native relocating to a different country for the first time, you think, oh my goodness, I'm living in Southeast Asia. I'm going to travel every single weekend. Then COVID came around about 5 months after living here. I mean, I feel really thankful because my first series of months here, I was able to actually travel the region a lot, either whether it was like just business travel to get to know the team in like the different markets or personal travel, because any chance I got, I like grabbed my stuff and checked out the hostels and did Thailand or Cambodia or whatever. It was a lot of fun while it lasted.
And Sarah, you studied abroad at Michigan State, right?
London study abroad. It was that latter half of December into January trip where we were there for about 2.5 weeks and had such a good experience.
Do you feel like that study abroad prepared you to work abroad? Or do you feel like there are things that you learned from that study abroad that you were able to carry into being an expat?
I remember actually one of the assignments we did while in London was we had to collect research. While we were there, we were, going from cafe to cafe, trying to understand like the locals. And we not only did desktop research, but we talked to people like firsthand and asked them questions. And very quickly, I learned that I was an American and I had a very certain way of looking at things. And I think that actually was a really important learning, just because that's how the world works. Recognizing that, I was a foreigner in a country and I'm asking information. So I think that was a big learning for me coming into Singapore where, basically I'm not from here. There's a new culture and I need to respect that new culture and figure out what that new culture is.
And what was the hardest part about adapting to a new culture and working within that culture with a very global team?
Honestly, it's something I'm still working on. I work on a team, but I'm pretty sure I have teammates from 16 or 17 different countries. I mean, it's crazy. Singapore is an absolute cultural melting pot, which has been amazing for me because, pre-fact, I come from a town of about 2,000 people called Charlottesville in northern Michigan. And for me to go from there to living in Singapore has been an amazing experience for me, super rich. But learning about people from different cultures and adjusting to that, I mean, you just have to listen, be open-minded. And I mean, from there, just move forward and try to catch up, I guess. been amazing learning every single day.
Did you always know that you wanted to work abroad, or did Google tell you, hey, we're going to station you abroad? And was that a shock?
So I've always wanted to work abroad. I've always wanted to have like a living outside of my country experience, probably since I was 12 or 13. I think it always really fascinated me. And I felt so far away from that reality growing up. Anytime I'd like meet a foreign exchange student or like the student exchange programs in my high school, I'd just ask them a million questions about where they're from and like just be so interested in it. When I went to Michigan State, I was so interested in their study abroad programs. I think if I would have had it my way and I would have had, lots of resources to pay for it, I would have done like a exchange program every year. And then once I started at Google, the fact that I would have access to all these roles in different countries was like one of the best sells for me. As soon as I had like the opportunity to do it, I did it.
And what's been the hardest part so far about being abroad?
I remember writing in my journal, like my first week here, being like, this is so hard. I'm so overwhelmed. It's just being in a place where everything's different. People are walking on the other side of the sidewalk. You turn a corner and you try to cross the street and cars are coming from the different direction and you're just like a little bit thrown off. Everything feels a little bit backwards until it doesn't, until it feels normal again. Conversation, dialogue, like different words are used. Even though people speak English in Singapore, there's just different, the British version or the Australian version or the Singapore version of how to say something. I think that took me a while. And when I moved here, I didn't really know anybody either. There were just some coworkers that I had heard of or had been connected to over email, but I didn't have any family or friends, anything that was really comfortable for me. So it just took a while to feel like this is my life and this is what I'm doing and adjusting to just the little subtle differences of living in a different place.
Do you feel like after this experience, you're more comfortable like in uncomfortable situations and are better able to adapt to, I guess, just uncertainty and what life might throw at you?
Definitely. I mean, that kind of goes back to my point earlier about like, it's so important to just listen and quickly having to adapt to uncomfortable or new foreign situations has been, a huge learning and probably just like a skill we're forever honing.
I think that that's a really hard lesson for a lot of people to learn, just to like be comfortable being uncomfortable and know that things are constantly going to be changing. And to have that experience so early on in your career, I feel like is going to be fundamentally just largely beneficial for everything that you do next.
Definitely. Yeah. And I would have to say too, adding then COVID to the mix, because in addition to being on the other side of the world, I mean, we're actually on like exact polar opposite time zones right now. It's 12 hours ahead here. That's been crazy. But then we have COVID and then we have borders shutting and flights being rejected. And Singapore is very strict. It has a very different approach of taking on COVID than the US. And I can't go home anymore, which is pretty weird. I was able to make it work temporarily over Christmas and New Year's. So it like added pressures to make it hard to be away and uncertain and kind of forces you to have to be adaptable. Online and working, remote working, all the things. Having this happen to me so early on in my career hopefully will pay dividends, or if not, it'll just be an experience that hones me as an individual, maybe even aside from career, like just that you can do it. You can get through a year without seeing your family. But it's something we're all dealing with in our own ways, whether you're living with your parents or you're not, we're on the other side of the world.
Absolutely. Sarah, what do you think has been the biggest takeaway you've had so far in your last 2 years being abroad?
My biggest takeaway, I'm gonna give you two. I think my first is that you can make it work, like in general, like whatever that goal is that you have in mind, you can make it work. You just have to chase it. You probably have to make some sacrifices. There's going to be some trade-offs, but you can definitely achieve whatever that is that you want to be able to pull off. And then the second thing is just the world's so rich. It's so amazing. Moving to a new country amidst all of this has been such a rewarding experience for me. It's been terrifying. It's been new. It's been different, but it's just been like such a huge learning. And also too that I'm in a regional brand role. Brand marketing is all about understanding people, understanding your core users and being able to develop programs and campaigns for those users. I'm an American living in Asia. I'm speaking on behalf of our team in Japan, in South Korea, in India, in Australia, in Indonesia. At some points, I've spoken on behalf of like Vietnam, Thailand, etc. I am the farthest thing, being these people, and I have to speak on behalf of them. So I think it's admitting that I don't know, it's listening, it's getting to know people and approaching every single situation like that you fundamentally need to understand somebody before you speak on behalf of them, especially when you're at like a massive company like this. So I think that's been kind of another learning. So I think I just gave you like 4 learnings.
No, I think all the learnings that you can pass on are absolutely fantastic. So Sarah, tell us more about the role that you do now. I mean, mean, you're in a global role. You're just talking about all the different regions that you work with. Like, what does a day look like for you?
I think that's been like one of my favorite parts of being here is I just get to learn every single day. Of the list of countries that I just mentioned, there's another like 4 or 5 that I also will like actively look over. But I think our biggest currently this year, we're most focusing on 4. And of those 4 countries, I hold relationships with country marketing managers that sit in ground. And these are the people that actually like are the local experts that oversee everything that we're doing as YouTube in that country. So at some point there might be just like one person who oversees the entire country. So one person who is YouTube marketing. There might be like 3 or 4. It just depends on like the country priority, the money that we have available for that country that year. I'm then at the regional level where I kind of like oversee this whole APAC region. And then we have our global team who sits in San Bruno. And the idea is that our global team thinks through product launches and strategies to be able to actually holistically do. So there's kind of that separation in order to be able to actually physically make these launches happen, because one person in the global team cannot possibly oversee 100 countries that YouTube operates in, or a couple hundred, because it wouldn't work. My role is one, it's like relationship management and being like a liaison between like our global strategies and our local initiatives. 2, I focus a lot on ensuring that our global strategies have APAC representation. Our friends in San Bruno solidify like strategy that we're thinking about APAC when we're doing so, whether we're trying to push for it being APAC first, whether we're trying to push for it to include more like YouTube creators from all over the world, or even just like giving feedback. Yeah, one person can't know everything. It's on the whole world of, people working to be able to then report back to that person and like, give the feedback. That's the other thing, feedback giving. And then also just developing brand campaigns for the APAC region in general. My team wears a lot of hats. I also do a lot of APAC specific insights development, just because we don't have anybody working on that right now. So I've been dabbling a bit into what I learned at Michigan State in terms of just like reading data, presenting data, telling a story, all that stuff. Regional marketing is an area where you have to wear more hats than probably like what I did when I was on the global team, just because you have to represent more. And then the local country teams literally have to do it all. So they're wearing the most hats by all means.
Sarah, what do you think would surprise people the most about how companies have to adapt products to different regions globally in order to best reach their consumer bases?
If you look at products or even just like campaigns, all starting with the data, but it's starting with a very specific local insight. And I think that's fascinating. I mean, if I look at Singapore right now, I've seen ads that, or even just like active campaigns that are so specific to something that's happening in like a metro station. I think that it's local first, right? It's really like, it's driven by people in their most comfortable environment, because that's how you feel like a brand's really listening to you. They're part of your community versus being headquartered out of the Bay Area in California.
That is a really good point for our listeners, just that you need to put the consumer at the center of everything that you're doing. And to your point of what you've been saying, like listen to what they want and what they're saying, and make sure that you're taking in all of the inputs that you need to in order to drive an effective campaign, and key aspects that you've learned too in your job of what's really important when you're looking at global marketing.
100%. People want to feel like they're being listened to. And they also want to feel like, especially a brand they love the most, they want to feel like that brand is their friend, somebody that understands even like local jargon, local slang. Like those are the brands that are winning.
Sarah, can you tell us a little bit more about like maybe some fun projects that you've worked on since you've been at Google, and or even maybe just like what has been the most exciting project that you've had an opportunity to work on?
To clarify too, that all opinions, all insights that I'm providing are definitely like of my own insights. So not speaking on behalf of the company. What, the company's most exciting project. Well, I'll share 2 projects in my time on YouTube. In my current role, I did a lot of work when we actually launched all of our COVID response. And that was a crazy time, but really exciting, because on one hand, I felt like the work I was doing was really important and really timely. So we did a lot of campaigns, like a lot of companies, where it was all about like staying home, staying safe, distancing, and trying to like spread awareness of these messages and how important it is. Done that last year, and we launched the campaign in like 13 countries in 3 weeks. And it was chaos, but it was so rewarding because I was seeing the work I'm doing all over online. There were like TV commercials in some countries. We even had like out of home, like billboards happening. So that was amazing. It's exciting to see the work you're doing streamed online, on air. And that all that work actually carried over where then I finally got to go home at the end of last year and was able to see a commercial I worked on just as my dad was watching football. I was like, oh my God, like I did that. I touched that. My feedback, that YouTube creator that was spotlighted was somebody that I helped facilitate. Like that was so cool.
I can't imagine launching a campaign in that many regions all at once because there's so much coordination that goes into a single campaign launch, let alone adapting that to all these different regions and all out at the same time. So that sounds like a massive project and a really cool one to be a part of.
It was crazy. And it definitely took the whole village to YouTube marketing to be able to actually pull it off. The other one that I wanted to mention too was before I moved to Singapore, I worked in San Francisco, San Bruno for the YouTube creators. We did these amazing creator summits. Also this big VidCon activation, which VidCon is like my 11-year-old self loved VidCon because it was this whole like YouTubers convention. And I got to help build our entire like activation there. And that was amazing. It was really had to think like holistically too, because there were targeting all the attendees, the actual YouTube creators, and then also actually this entire like advertiser business as well. So you had to think really holistically about it. And I thought that was like a really cool challenge and just fun because it was videos and had to throw a big party. And I love event planning and stuff.
It sounds so cool. I feel like we see a lot of the cool events that the companies out in Silicon Valley host, and especially for like their creators, but also even for their internal employees. So even just having like the backstage pass to see how all of that comes to life, I can't imagine. It sounds really interesting. Sarah, maybe just to round us out here, what advice do you wish someone had given you while you were in school?
To not say no to opportunities, but also to not hold yourself back, probably. I think if I look back at how I got where I am today, so much of it has been just from those conversations that I had that made me nervous. The flagging somebody down at an event where I was like, oh my God, that person had a really cool talk. I'm going to go talk to them and I'm going to try to leave an impression. I'm going to try to get like their email address. But those conversations terrified me and I just did it. And that conversation then led to a job that then led to another opportunity that made me really uncomfortable that I then had to seek out and just put myself out there. And it worked. People are really nice. People want to help you. Don't be afraid to approach people. I mean, this goes back to like maybe a networking tip in general, like don't be afraid to reach out to people, especially these people that already sign up for these events to help students or these events that are open to developing these relationships. These are the people that want to help you. So take advantage of that, but also don't hold yourself back. You're capable of more than you even think you are. And you'll keep surprising yourself if you push yourself to the limit in that way. Think of your moonshot goals and go after those goals because you definitely can do it.
Sarah, that's awesome. I think that's definitely going to resonate with a lot of our listeners. So I appreciate you sharing that piece of advice. For students who are interested in connecting with Sarah, you can connect with her on LinkedIn. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciated having you on the Marketing Spotlight. Thank you so much. And everybody have a great day.